time. Join me now to weigh in, representing Georgia's 10th Congressional District, Congressman Jody Hice. Congressman, thank you so much for joining me. So, Congressman, I'll start here. Why is it that the State Department, the White House, they can't give us a solid answer on how many Americans need to be evacuated? And we know that it's a lie when they say that there are no Americans stranded, because Americans do feel stranded, and we hear the reports of it.
And listen, in a classified briefing, I can't go obviously into the specifics, but I can tell you this: of the 50,000 plus individuals who have been evacuated, a mere fraction of that number involves actual American citizens. And so we are left with 10, 15, 20,000 Americans who are not only stranded, but they are on the verge of being hostages if indeed Joe Biden does what he is now saying, and that is he is not going to extend the August 31st deadline. So we only have a few days left in order to get out the vast majority of Americans who are in Afghanistan. This is unacceptable. It is infuriating. It is yet another example of a totally inept administration who is incapable of doing what our motto is, and that is to leave no man behind. We've got an enormous job to do, and this administration is so far behind the 8 ball, and yet they are still saying they're not going to extend the deadline. This is unacceptable.
Yeah, so they're making it almost appear like they have an option to extend it if they want to, but they're casually not going to extend it because they're just going to try to get in that deadline. But they have pressure from the Taliban, who says, absolutely not. The U.S. cannot stay past the 31st. If they do, there will be problems. And we saw a reporter interview one of the Taliban officials, and we have the video roll tape.
The Taliban has said that if the U.S. decides to leave beyond the 31st of August, there will be consequences. What kind of consequences are you talking about?
If they extend behind 31st August, that is a clear violation, one thing. Secondly, about consequences, it is up to our leadership how to proceed and what kind of decision they take. That decision will be implemented.
Do you think it's likely to turn into some kind of battle or a fight with the Americans?
This is on the basis of our leaders and seniors' decisions. So,
what do you make of that? And so, again, we have the Biden administration saying, oh, we're going to try to get out by the 31st. And they're not even saying that they will actually get every single American out. There is no commitment to that. They said, oh, well, we'll give them information that they need before the 31st. You know what I'd like to hear? I'd like to hear from our president and from the spokespeople at the State Department that the Taliban doesn't have a choice. If we need to be there past the 31st, we will. And they will be met with fire and fury if the Taliban doesn't play along with us.
Yeah, exactly. That's what we need, and that's what we used to have in the White House, is real leadership. The Taliban and other terrorist organizations respond to one thing, and that is power. It's strength. And we don't have that right now in the current administration, and it's so unbelievably unfortunate. We do not need to be negotiating at this point with a bunch of terrorists. As Americans, we are the ones who should be setting the standard and setting the negotiating as to how we are going to rescue our citizens. This is not something that's negotiable with a bunch of terrorists. This is our decision. It's our people. It's our legal residents here, and we are going to do everything in our power to evacuate them and get them to safety. That is how this ought to be operating. Instead, it's the tail wagging the dog, and here we are with the greatest military in the history of the world, and yet we are kowtowing to a bunch of terrorist thugs, and this administration is willing to do that completely. And again, it shows the absolute out of control ineptness of the current administration.
Yeah, and when you look at the reports and what we're hearing about what's actually happening on the ground versus what we're being told by some in the media and some from the Biden administration, it's like we're walking on eggshells with the Taliban. again, we shouldn't be taking orders from the Taliban. They should be taking orders from us.
Exactly, Stephanie, and I can tell you our office has been heavily involved in helping evacuate a number of people, and many other offices have been as well. And I can just add this, it is equally frustrating that our own government has been largely missing in action during this entire evacuation process. We have had to lean heavily on NGOs, non-government organizations, other countries. We have leaned on people on the ground, individuals who are risking their lives. Yes, we've had a handful in our government, and I don't want to throw them under the bus, but by and large, our government agencies, the State Department and others, have been massively missing in action. And unfortunately, not only have we not been able to lean on our military dictating to the Taliban how we're going to evacuate and that we are in control of this evacuation, but we actually have had to lean on NGOs and other countries to do the job that our own government has been incapable of doing to this point.
Yeah, and then I saw this headline too, that the Taliban's no longer going to allow Afghans to go to the Kabul airport for evacuation. So that's the latest from the Taliban. Again, they're sending out all these orders. And I'd still like to get to the bottom of how is it that Biden right now is presiding over one of the biggest foreign policy disasters in modern time. And he's calling it like, you know, this is okay. You know, in Biden's world, he did nothing wrong. It was handled totally fine. Don't worry about it. And I believe that members of Congress are going to have some hearings to try to get to the bottom of it, because obviously things weren't handled fine here.
Well, you're exactly right. We've got to get to the bottom of this. We've got to have investigations, and we are certainly calling on that in the Oversight Committee, urging Chairwoman Maloney to have some hearings and some investigations in this regard. But again, we have an administration that either mentally is not of the capacity needed to deal with this type of issue, or he's taking very poor advice, or he's not listening to the advice that he's getting. But either way, this is yet another example of virtually every major decision that's been made from this current administration since inauguration has been harmful to the well-being of this country, be it our energy independence or being what's happening on the southern border, or inflation and out-of-control spending, so yet again what's happening in foreign policy. This shows the total inability of this administration to operate in the best interest of the country. It's time for action to be done, be it through resignation or starting the thought and process of possible impeachment. But this current administration cannot continue down the path that it currently is going. This is destructive in every way to our country, our allies, and now our citizens and other people in Afghanistan who, like I said, are not only stranded, but they are on the verge of becoming hostages in a very extremely violent Taliban takeover of that country.
Yeah, it's just such a terrifying thought what the people will go through, especially women and children too. It's so devastating. Well, Congressman, we appreciate your insight. Thank you so much.